right?
Mm.
So just look like, what can I do to have healthier air, healthier water, and healthier ecosystem, every microbiome that I have, my skin, my mouth, my gut, and looking at what you can do to minimize that. So knowledge is power without having to go in and look at genetics. But I think it's so cool that we can finally stop guessing and going, well, I think I'm inflamed, or I think, well, do I have problems with autophagy? Do I clean up my cellular, garbage well? Like, I don't know, right? So it's like, we'll show you exactly where you're at, and then it give you the practical targeted steps in order to optimize yourself, optimize your body, and not follow some
Welcome
biohack.
to Vitality Made Simple. The following production is for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you need medical advice, call your doctor. Now, let's go to Vitality Made Simple.
So if you have worried about birthdays, not been able to enjoy your birthday party because the candles were setting off the smoke alarm, then this podcast is for you. If you're one of those people that is like, oh, I'm just getting old, no, stop thinking that way. It is with glee that I welcome Dr. Kelly Halderman. Welcome, Dr. Halderman.
Thank you so much, Dr. Debbie. It is such an honor to be on your podcast. I have become a huge fan of all your content and everything you're putting out in this podcast. It's such a blessing. So thank you so much for having me today.
Well, listeners, you're going to love her. And welcome to Vitality Made Simple. This is the podcast that equips you to feel better, look better, and to enjoy better relationships. Oh my gosh, is there some great stuff to learn today? I'm your host, Dr. Debbie Ozment, and I just thank you for being here. So, I want Dr. Halderman to tell us her story and how that sort of changed her trajectory after going to medical school.
Yes. So I did start off my journey in the medical field. So I graduated from medical school. I did an internship in family practice, really was doing great. I scored in the 99th percentile on my boards. Like I was like, this is it. This is what I strive to do. I paid all that money to do. But when I was on call one day, I suddenly got a scotoma. So that's where it's like you get a migraine and then there's flashing lights and you can't see. And I was supposed to be delivering a baby and suddenly I can't see out of nowhere. I've been perfectly healthy. And so nurse, grab the baby, all good. But I'm like, what is going on with my own health? And so I started to have some other neurological symptoms, really pretty scary. And so I was sent in for an MRI, and which is what is great about being in medicine is you get shuffled to the front, right? These are your friends, these are your colleagues. And so I got an MRI, and the neurologist said, you have the beginnings of multiple sclerosis. And I was 26, 27 years old. I had two little small children. And basically, I always say this on podcasts, I was given a death sentence.
Yeah.
It was, we're really sorry. We don't know what's going on, but here's some pills, and you should go home and be with your children and your husband. And I was like, oh, no, 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 no. Like, I know that I just paid $500,000 for all these tools that are amazing. Allopathic medicine is amazing, but I can't fix myself. I'm like, no. So I went back and I got a naturopathic medical degree, a traditional one, and I started learning about detoxification and oral health and the food choices and nutrition and genetics. And I was hooked. I was like, this is amazing. And what I found is that there was a gap. And so there was a gap between all this amazing information, clinical trials that have been published, and then there's getting it into your doctor's office. And on average, this is a published study, an average, it takes 17 years for all that great information, the cutting edge therapies, all that to get into your doctor's office. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I wasn't in the position that I would have been in, I would still be practicing medicine. But I step back and I don't see patients because I'm focused on the translational medicine. I'm a board certified medical science liaison, meaning that I can take all those tough concepts and I can really make them, really granular and make them understandable for people. And that's what we're going to do today. And so I'm so excited to be here. I've studied nutrition. I have a doctorate in clinical nutrition. I have doctorates in other things as well. But really my passion again is the nutrigenomics, like our DNA, our blueprint. How do we optimize our health based on, not just cookie cutter protocols, but again, based on precision. And that's where we're going to talk about something so cool today.
Yes, this is going to be so cool. And I'm always amazed with people like you who take their misery and really turn it into a mission.
Yeah.
And so through this, you have developed the 12 hallmarks of aging. So tell us about those hallmarks.
So, right. So, the 12 hallmarks of aging, and I cannot take credit for creating these 12 hallmarks. So, these were published originally in 2013 by Dr. Carlos Otin and his team. And so, this groundbreaking paper, the 12 hallmarks of aging, actually was only nine. So, 2013, we had nine hallmarks of aging. And then we had in 2022, he published another paper adding three. So, now we have a total of 12 hallmarks of aging. So, what does that mean? It basically means that the reasons why that we're aging can be categorized into 12 biological processes that happen in the body. So we don't really have to guess anymore. I felt like when I read these papers, I was given like the keys to the biohacking universe. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're trying to do so many things to stay healthy, to really increase our health span, not just our lifespan, but our health span. And so when I read these papers, I thought, and so many others, because these papers were groundbreaking, like great, we have a way to look at aging, a new lens to look at it instead of going, oh, I got another gray hair, oh, I've got some
Mm-hmm.
wrinkling going on. It's much more complex, but I am here today so we can go through these hallmarks, these changes. It's almost like the dirty dozen of why we age.
Yeah.
And so when you understand these, and again, I'll take the research and I'll send it through my filter so it can make sense for the listener if you're a layperson, so that you can have a personalized way of targeting your longevity plan, and that what is happening inside of your body to cause aging, because when we know better, we can do better.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yes, 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 yes. So I can't wait to hear what is number one.
Okay, so basically the hallmarks are split up into three categories, and the first one is called genomic instability. So our genomic means our genome. So our DNA is like the instruction manual for our body. And over time, that manual can get damaged, like pages getting ripped or smudged. So the cell, which has the DNA inside of it, it can't follow the instructions properly. And so everything that we are doing, our DNA is the instruction manual again on what we're our body's expressing, whether it's proteins, hormones, antioxidants. And so think of that, when that blueprint, when that instruction manual gets damaged, and according to the American Federation of Aging Research, our DNA is damaged 1 million times per day, per day. So that is causing aging, is that we're not able to have that transcription where our DNA is doing what it's supposed to do. So you have some instability in there.
You have a real gift for making difficult concepts simple. Thank you for that. So
Yeah.
genetics scare a lot of people. They they sort of think it's destiny,
Mhm.
and it's not destiny. So tell us about these genetic SNPs, single nucleotide
Polymorph.
polymorphisms.
You
So we're going to
got
call
it.
them SNPs, and why we don't have to worry about those, but we do need to know.
Exactly. So your DNA, so it has coding on it. So it's just like a string of instructions, right? And so when you have a gene, you get a copy from your mom and a copy from your dad. Okay. And so a really hot gene everyone is talking about nowadays is MTHFR. Okay. So that is one that has to do with methylation. So when you have a copy, you can get a copy that is fully functional. So it does what it's supposed to do. It when it expresses, it's actually making the correct protein, making the correct enzyme. And so you can get two of those, which means that that's normal. That's called the wild type. So you can have one copy though that maybe came from mom or dad, we never know really, that has a little variation to it. So that single nucleotide polymorphism basically means it's just different than a normal gene. And so then when your body is told to to make a protein using those instructions, your instructions may be a little bit different. And so when you express that protein, it might not be as good at doing its job. Right. And that can mean like methylation problems. That can mean hormone problems. That can mean longevity issues. And we're going to get into some of these really cool topics like autophagy. Autophagy is the cleaning mechanism of your body. I got a bad copy from mom and a bad copy from dad on how I cellularly clean my body. Right. And so that puts us at risk for Alzheimer's disease, all kinds of neurological diseases, cardiovascular disease, chronic Lyme. So a lot of, that way that my body produces those proteins and those enzymes is different, and it's not as good. It's really not as good at producing. And so it's like, I say this, I wrote a book, it's called The Thyroid Debacle. And in it, we have a chapter on genetics. And I talk about it being like a Lego set. So you get a copy, you get the same parts and pieces for your Lego set, but I get a really bad instructions, and my instructions, and maybe it's really missing a few pieces. And so I'm trying to build a little car, right? And my car comes out and it's missing a wheel. I mean, it'll still do kind of what it needs to do, but it's not as efficient as those instructions that were perfect. And so you have your fully functioning protein or enzyme, and then you have your one that's kind of clunky. So that's where you really don't have to, let's kind of go back to what you're saying, is that just because I have two, it's called homozygous, so I have two bad copies, different copies, that doesn't mean that it's doom and gloom, right? Because we have this thing called epigenetics. And so we want to really optimize the way that we're influencing our genes to express. We can influence our genes to express to make up for some of these SNPs, some of these faulty, the lack of that function. You can make up for it by really locking in on epigenetics above the genetics. And so that's what they always say. They say that genetics loads the gun, but epigenetics pulls the trigger, right? So if you're eating at McDonald's every day, no offense, I'm sure there's something good you can eat at McDonald's these days. But if you're under so much stress, if you don't like your job, if your bowels aren't moving, if your dental health, if you have bleeding gums, right, Dr. Debbie, then you'll have the expression of your genome in the worst way. So it's kind of like this first hallmark of aging is about your genes in your genome that live on that DNA, right? But it's not all doom and gloom again, because even though you may have some, again, polymorphisms, you can really support your body, especially with nutrition and, again, stress and all those things that really contribute. You can really do your best and not have to worry that your body is compromised. So, just kind of looking at that and looking at the genetic instability means even if you have perfect genes, let's say that you don't have any single nucleotide polymorphisms, we live in a world where we are inundated with toxins. Right. We're inundated where our genes, even if they have the polymorphisms or not, they're just being attacked. So it makes sense, right? It makes sense that we can look at this as a hallmark of aging and know that, yes, the things in our life, unfortunately, like the toxins, they are causing some instability in that genome.
Yes, and everybody has things. Nobody has perfect genetics, 100%. And we just deal with it. It's like whatever's, there, we don't stress over it. We don't let that create more stress on the epigenome. We just accept it and follow amazing people like you who tell us what to do. So we're going to get to that, folks. So the first three have to do with genetics. What's the next section?
Yeah, so the first three, they're divided into like three different categories, and the first has to do with fundamental drivers of cellular and molecular damage. So the second one, right under that genomic instability, is telomere attrition. So your telomeres are like the plastic tips on shoelaces, and they protect your DNA. But every time your cells divide, because they just normally divide, those tips get like shorter and shorter and shorter. And when they get too short, the cells stop working, or they can die. So it's really like you can do telomere testing to see how long your telomeres are, and that can give you an idea of like your longevity or how fast your cells are getting insulted. Because when my cell is sitting there and it gets like attacked by a toxin, it'll replicate again. And so then your telomeres are getting shorter and shorter. And so that's another one that's just, it's just driving aging. And I'll just go into that, the third one in this category. So it's epigenetic alterations. So you kind of have your genomic instability. So your DNA is getting attacked. Your telomeres are getting shorter too, and that's not good. And then so these epigenetic alterations. So imagine your DNA is bookmarked with the sticky notes telling your body which genes to turn on and turn off. Well, aging messes with those bookmarks and it causes the wrong genes to be activated or the right ones to be ignored. And that's things like deletions, mutations, translocations. It's a little bit complex, but just think about like how it's just it's the system that's in place. Aging knocks that out of place, and that can cause issues. Again, a driver of why you're aging.
So things that we're going to hear about in the next 9 hallmarks of aging are
Mhm.
going to impact, they are epigenetic factors, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. A lot of the rest of them are epigenetic factors, and some like we can really we hear it all the time is like mitochondrial dysfunction and chronic inflammation, which is like, yes, everybody knows that, and it's not a stretch to think like, yes, that is absolutely one of the reasons that you are aging. But under kind of like that next, the category of the first is the loss of proteostasis, which sounds kind of like what? I mean, that's a lot. But proteostasis, so basically proteins are the tools your cells use to function. But with age, they get rusty, they get broken down, they get misfolded, and it just clogs up your system. And this one, loss of proteostasis, is really related to, again, those neurodegenerative diseases. And so it's something that's happening in your body. There's like this critical tipping point where our health and our aging occurs when replenishing the good proteins no longer keeps up with the deletion or like getting rid of the damaged ones. So you can kind of think of that with Alzheimer's of the beta amyloid and some of the other like the tau protein and then the alpha synuclein with Parkinson's. Those are just your body not being able to get in there and do that cleanup, do that loss of proteostasis. Like your proteins are like they're out of balance and it can cause big issues.
Boy, and you really see how people can feel hopeless in that.
Oh, yeah.
And then of course I love to bring it back, Kelly, to relationships. I mean, all of these things that you have in your pillars
Mhm.
impact relationships. When people don't feel good, they're not as involved. And when they're not as involved, that's even epigenetic. So
Oh, for
so
sure.
so continue. Tell us about that would be number 4. Tell us about number 5.
Yeah, number five. So before I start number five, I want to tell everybody that when I found out about these hallmarks of aging, I was like, this is great. I'm so happy to know about these, but how did they relate to me? Which of these are really being affected negatively because of maybe my genetics, my epigenetics? So I really wanted to know about what genes are related to these, and that's where we're going to wrap this up at the end because I'm going to tell you about how you can personalize looking at these 12 hallmarks and you can know which ones you're going to have weaknesses in. Because I always think it's nice to know, like, where's our genetic weaknesses? Just it's good to know. So if you're looking at it and going, like, I don't know where to start, I don't know which one, we have taken the time from your research labs and myself and a geneticist, we looked at this and we found the genes. So then I'm looking at my personalized longevity plan because I know which ones I have problems with. So it's like if you have problems with genomic instability, you have to be extra sure you are protecting your DNA. You're going to get those antioxidants in, and we'll kind of get into some examples. But this is like the keys again to the biohacking universe. It's like, oh my gosh, now I know why we age. Now I know what is causing me specifically to age, and then here's the exact things that I need to do. So we're gonna get there, but you're right. Let's keep getting through the hallmarks. So number five is deregulated nutrient sensing. So basically, your body has sensors that tell it how much energy you've got and how to use it. Aging throws those sensors off. So it's like a broken gas gauge telling you when you're full, when you're running on empty. So pretty straightforward with that one. As you age, that just happens. And the sixth is mitochondrial dysfunction.
Mm-hmm.
So mitochondria are our cells' power plants. They give us our ATP, our energy currency. And when they wear out, they just make less energy. And that, again, that can just cause so many downstream effects. But it kind of would make sense that as we age, that system is just, it's going to get a little bit broken down, unfortunately. But again, if this is one of your weaknesses, then you want to make sure you are supporting your mitochondria. And I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to do that. And cellular senescence. So this is the last one in this category, cellular senescence. So some cells stop dividing and most hit this limit. So I will say this is that cells do hit the limit of how much they can replicate. So they're going to go along and they're going to replicate and they're going to replicate, right? And then they hit this Hayflick limit where they can't replicate anymore. So they're not dead, but they're not metabolically active. And so we call them zombie cells. So think of your body as you're getting older, you're accumulating these senescent cells. So there's these zombie cells. But the problem with these zombie cells is that they spit out all these inflammatory messengers, inflammagens, and it just ages us. And so I actually published a paper in the Journal of Aging last year on cellular senescence because it is becoming it's a huge billion-dollar target for like pharmaceutical companies and nutraceutical companies. But really, if you think about how we can stop that, it really starts with, again, epigenetics, like low stress, low toxins, good relationships, like you said, because we're just putting so much stress on our cells. And then they're turning senescent, and then they just sit there and then they spew off all these, again, inflammagens. And there are things that you can do, especially if you have genetic weaknesses here. There are compounds that you can take. There are practices that you can do to really slow this up and get rid of them. That's called senolytic.
Oh, love it. As a clinician for 40 years, one of the saddest things I see is when somebody comes in and says, Dr. Debbie, I wish I'd known this. If I had known what this was going to do, I would have changed my lifestyle. And
Right.
so that's what's so inspiring about your work is that you're helping people at any stage
Any stage.
to make little changes that are going to absolutely greatly impact their trajectory. So, okay.
100%. 100%. Because I think that's right. That's like the personalized approach that we're all looking for is that if we see that we have genetic weaknesses in our mitochondrial dysfunction, at any point, starting to support them in the right way and for that person can make a huge difference. Like, absolutely. So I think this is something where it's such a great tool at any stage. But again, you really want to lock into like what is aging you the most, right? And so that's where I think the power lies in looking at them. And like you said, it's like I wish I would have known, where it's like now we have so much information, which is it's just so cool.
It really is because again, the genetic thing is like, oh well, my father had this and my grandfather had this, and I'm just stuck in that lane. No, you can take a
Yeah.
detour and totally change where you end up. So okay, so we're on. We had
Right.
cellular senescence, and I want to get back to that because I'm really interested in the inflammasome area. But number eight, what?
Number eight, so we have stem cell exhaustion. So your stem cells are your internal repair team. And as you age, this team gets tired or runs out of members. So healing and regeneration, they just slow down. And that just happens as we age. But again, there's things that we can do to help protect our stem cells, to help not wipe them out so that we can keep them along. Because again, stem cell exhaustion has to do with all the diseases of aging, cardiovascular, neurodegeneration, metabolic issues. So really looking at that one too is a great one to help drive your personal plan.
Love it. Love it. I know for our listeners, you love talking about stem cells. We had Dr. William Lee on, and that's what we talked about
Oh,
is stem
cool.
cells. It was a fantastic interview a couple of months ago. So number nine.
Number nine, so altered intercellular communication. So your cells are constantly talking to each other and they're coordinating responses. But with age, this cellular group chat becomes confused or a little chaotic. And so that leads to more inflammation and less coordination with that communication.
What a great word picture. This chat going on. Oh, that's
Yep.
so good. Okay,
Yep.
so
Yep.
altered intercellular communication, and
Yep. It's just
communication is the
nuts.
key. That's the
That's
key to
right.
life. That's totally the
That's
key.
right.
So
And yep.
they
Number
just
10,
stopped.
yep.
They stopped talking, or they say, jumbled words, I guess. So
Yep. They can't get the job done anymore, right?
yeah.
Number 10 is one of my absolute favorites. So disabled macroautophagy. So autophagy is basically your cell's cleanup crew. I always think of like these little intercellular vacuums that are going around and they're just getting rid of debris, they're getting rid of old proteins, they're getting rid of all kinds of just that things that just gum up your cells, but autophagy can slow down with age. And so then, like, the trash is building up in your cells, which is leading to dysfunction and disease. And this is when personally I know that I have those SNPs in autophagy. And so, again, putting me at risk for chronic Lyme, that's eventually what I got diagnosed with, chronic Lyme and mold issues. So it just makes sense that this is one where I needed to focus on a lot. They're called like your non-negotiables, right? If you're looking at these and you know you have genetic weaknesses here, here, and here, it's like it's go time, right? It is really time to really pay attention to these while optimizing like the whole picture. And that kind of leads me into number 11, which is chronic inflammation, right?
Hmm.
Inflammaging is this new word. And
Hmm.
that's really not a surprise. I think even to a layperson is like, well, why do we age? Some people may say like, well, the sun, or like my stressful job, or like my spouse. And it's like, that's not wrong. Like but scientifically, chronic inflammation is inflammation. Even when there's no infection, when your body is just ramped up. So we're always in this state we should be in a state of balance called homeostasis. And a lot of the times, especially in the world we're living in with the food sources we have and all the toxins, is that we're just tipped in this favor of inflammation versus reduction. So like inflammation, anti-inflammatory. And so when we're in this chronic inflammation, it's like having a fire smoldering constantly in the background, and it shuts down everything. It shuts down your detox, shuts down, your liver. There's these transporters in it called the MRP2, and that's how the liver gets the toxins out, that it's so nicely packaged up for us. But in a state of inflammation, like a chronic inflammation, those transporters get shut down. And so those toxins don't go into the bile where they should go into your gut and eventually into the toilet. They end up going back into your bloodstream. So, I mean, chronic inflammation, this is one of like the most important ones where we really have to look at it. We have to we can look at markers, we can look at signs and symptoms, and really try and be aggressive about dampening this hallmark in particular.
Well, and that's a hallmark people have a lot of power over. And it is just so big. I mean, you could, you know, throw a dart and pick an area to work on and make a difference. So
For sure.
that's, yeah, I really want to talk about that. So number 12.
Yeah, and number 12 ties right in with number 11. So number 12 is microbiome disturbances. And
Yes.
so your
Amen, sister. Yes.
yeah, so your gut is home to trillions of microbes that help regulate your immunity, your digestion, your mood. We have that great gut brain access through the vagus nerve. So really like looking at that gut, looking at the microbiome. These are actually a couple of the new ones that Dr. Teen added. And it's like, yes, we've been saying like the gut, the gut, the gut for so long. So as we age, unfortunately, this gut ecosystem can become imbalanced, again, leading
Right.
to inflammation. And what's interesting about this one is that when you're looking at gut dysbiosis, when you're looking at gut issues, SIBO, all kinds of different diagnoses, because our gut is just it's actually like an external tube, like all what we're eating and everything going in, it's so key. And so when it's off, you're going to produce what's called LPS, lipopolysaccharide, and that comes from like the bad bacteria, right? So this LPS is like a metastatic disease. It is the worst metastatic disease because LPS can shut down all your detoxification. It can spur on inflammation. And so really, I feel like these are so tied. And like you said, this is empowering because we can really support gut health. We can do a lot to really work on our gut, lower that LPS, and then lower that inflammaging. So I would think that this is a big part of your practice, Dr. Debbie, is looking at the gut
Yeah.
and the gut microbiome.
It really is because health starts in the gut, but the gut starts in the mouth. And
Yeah.
now with these incredible technologies, we can actually find oral pathogens in the gut that we know started in the mouth. And they are in tumors, they are impacting irritable bowel. Of course, we find them in the brain. So I appreciate that you address this because we really have held the mouth out as separate, but it is a big, big, big contributor to the gut microbiome. It's one long tube, stem to stern, north to south. Um, I say pie hole to where. And so
Mhm.
it's just, it really, really matters. So, okay, let's go back. There's just so much I know people want to hear about from you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
where do you want to head next?
Yeah, I think let's head into, well, first of all, that was brilliant of you to say that that last hallmark, it says microbiome disturbances, but the paper focuses on the gut, but really looking at the mouth takes it a step further. And so I absolutely love that because balancing and making sure that we're not seeding the gut with bad bacteria seems like an even, more root cause from the
Mhm.
root cause of the gut being the problem. So I absolutely love that. But I think what we should do is we should talk about now the different panels that we've created at Premier Research Lab to look at where your genetic weaknesses are. And so you may have a genetic report that includes some of these SNPs. And so you can go and look without even doing the report. But the report is something we created, the basic panel, and then the advanced. And so the basic will include your biological aging and adaptation, which includes that genomic instability, the telomere attrition. It'll include mitochondrial dysfunction, chronic inflammation, and microbial ecosystem support. So if you kind of think it like those are your foundational basics. Like, are any of these causing me to age? Of course, these 12 hallmarks are causing anyone and everyone to age, but do I have even more genetic weakness in one of these particular areas? So I can just go into one of the first genes that we isolated is called the ADGRD1. So that supports tissue signaling, immune responses, structural and integrity, which is like critical for maintaining all tissues and again, tackling aging. And so if you have some polymorphisms in this, first of all, I suggest that we're not treating genes here. It
Right.
drives me crazy when it's like,
Right.
I have MTHFR, let's take methylfolate. No, 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 no. Let's look at someone's signs and symptoms. Do you have premature skin aging? Do you have metabolic disease? Do you already have prediabetes? Do you have cardiovascular issues? Are your lipids okay? So it's like looking at the signs and symptoms can really tell you, are you expressing that gene? Just like we started to talk about.
Right.
Again, it's about the epigenetics. So that's what I like to do. I like to see this and say like, we have your report, Dr. Debbie, and you have some genetic weaknesses here. I would even suggest doing a biological age testing because this one falls under the category of biological aging. You can do that with some companies like True Diagnostics, where I may be a certain age, but yet that's chronological on the birthday cake, right? But
Mhm.
I can actually be biologically younger or older, right? So if I did this test on you and I found you to be a couple of years older, then we would go, okay, it's time to really lock down on getting this biological aging, this category. Let's see what we can do to get you back on track and have your biological age actually be slowed so you can actually be even younger than your chronological age.
Mhm.
And so for this one, it's recommended in the literature. So all the recommendations are not out of thin air. They are based on published papers that's clinical, not preclinical. So this is not talking about, well, this did really great on a rat or this did really, it's like, no, these were actually shown in people. So EGCG, so green tea, vitamin C, and glutathione or NAC. Those are some of the ones we really want to make sure like your non-negotiables that you're using those appropriately to really
Mhm.
protect that DNA, protect that genetic instability and protect your telomeres as well.
Okay, so I want to repeat green tea, vitamin C,
Mhm.
NAC, and you had one more.
Glutathione or NAC.
Glutathione. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean,
Okay.
master antioxidant, and
Master.
just yeah, exactly. It's the best. And I think like you
Hmm.
just have to be careful. So NAC, some people don't convert that well to glutathione because they have some genetic SNPs. So that's why I like to use, again, the genomics to guide, because if you're taking a bunch of NAC, but you can't convert it
Right.
to glutathione, well, then you need glutathione. And then you just want to make sure that with the glutathione, it has to be recycled in the body. So you don't want to take a ton of glutathione. And then what happens is that it'll turn into more of a burden on your body. So there's a balance. And that's why I love working with, like, encouraging people to work like with people like you, because we can really look at that and target that and get the right
Yeah.
dose for you. And then again, we're looking at signs and symptoms. We're looking at labs to make sure that this category is well supported. Yeah.
Yes, no, I think that's key to point out with even supplements. I tell people they can be like your high school boyfriend or girlfriend. Too much of a good thing's not a good thing. And so,
Uh,
it's really true. I know. Think about that. But it's really true, because we just think we can chug whatever and okay, I'm going to cover a multitude of other lifestyle practices, but it's not that way. It,
that's
it
right.
needs to be at optimal levels.
That's right.
So that those are actionable things
Yep.
because people can easily get ECGC green tea. We've had a lot of a great podcast about vitamin C with Dr. Levy, NAC glutathione, lots. So great information. Okay.
Yep. And then another one, so under that category, so mitochondrial dysfunction. So we'd be looking at the TFA gene. So that's essential for mitochondrial DNA transcription, replication, plays a critical role in really maintaining your mitochondrial DNA and stability and function. So think about if you have polymorphisms in there, it's like, ooh, we better take a look at how your mitochondria are functioning, right? So we're going to look at things like the mito swab. We're going to look at key labs and again, signs and symptoms. Are you fatigued? Like, because again, a mitochondria power every one of our cells. So we really want to make sure that those are on point. And so if we find that more support is needed, again, non-negotiables, like I'm going to be on CoQ10, I'm going to be on PQQ. We look at creatine. Creatine's great. We look at using like an NADH, which is a form of NAD, and things like magnesium. You absolutely need magnesium for your mitochondria to work. And so if you have some SNPs there, we really want to make sure that you're really looking to make sure, like you said, you don't want someone coming to you going, I wish I would have known. Well, this gives you the information that you wish you would have known, like right now. And then with the TFAM, the TFAM, also it's really important to support your mitochondria in the literature with fasting, some intermittent fasting, if you're approved to do this by your licensed healthcare provider. A ketogenic diet can definitely help with our mitochondria. Again, that's person specific. Some people can't do that, some people fail on it. And then cold exposure, high intensity interval training, resistance training, because those all upregulate PGC1 alpha, which causes your mitochondria to proliferate. It's a mitochondrial biogenesis driver. So it's like we can get really specific on what you need to do to support it with nutrition, and then the other things, those epigenetic lifestyle things that you can do to really keep those mitochondria on point.
Well, it makes sense too, Dr. Halderman, from even the standpoint of spending money wisely, because
Yes.
I see too many people who just buy this, I buy this, I gotta have this, and their cabinet's just full of all these pills, and who knows, number one, if they're good pills, and supplements even, and then number
Yep.
two, if your body even recognizes those, and if they're absorbing. So, to
Yep.
me, this targeted method testing, not guessing, knowing what your body needs based on your genetics, based on your lifestyle. I mean, the testing is going to show people so much
Mm-hmm.
more in terms of, how they can make small changes. So,
That's right. Yeah. And then the last one I'll mention in this category is under chronic inflammation. So again, we're all at risk for chronic
mhm,
inflammation. We really are. But those with the IL-6R, so that's a receptor. So it encodes
yeah.
for the interleukin 6 receptor, which is central to immune signaling and inflammatory responses. So you'd really want to look at how inflamed this person is. Again, you can look at all the labs that have to do with inflammation. You can look at signs and symptoms. You can look at their diagnoses and know, do they have this inflammation? And then if they have these SNPs, if you have these SNPs, it's like your non-negotiables are things like turmeric and resveratrol. I mean, like really, really honing in and helping your body to really cut that inflammation down. would be one of the great strategies. And again, another snip underneath that chronic inflammation category is a GCKR. So that is really critical for glucose metabolism. And I just shout from the rooftops how important glucose metabolism, glucose regulation is. I really encourage people to wear a CGM. I usually have one on. I just took a break, but a continuous glucose monitor, because for the foundations of health, again, it's like blood sugar, blood sugar, blood sugar. Like I think 50% of the population, 1 in 2
Yeah.
people have pre-diabetes in this country.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa. And so then if you, on top of that, if you have a polymorphism, a SNP in this, it's like you have to be extremely proactive in that blood sugar management. Like, I don't care if you have any part of the spectrum of diabetes to pre-diabetes. It's just really important that you're testing your blood glucose, you're having a professional help you to really target in. And then there's tons of really great nutritional things that you can use to help with blood sugar, berberine. I mean, you can use probiotics and all kinds of other things to really help, chromium to help with that blood sugar regulation. But if this is you and this is me, unfortunately, like, I'm locking in on this because it's driving my aging. It is literally driving my aging more so than the mitochondrial dysfunction. Again, like autophagy and chronic inflammation are really big ones for me. So I'm really locked in on these.
Well, and interestingly, there's incredible research in the two-way street between oral pathogens and blood sugar. So increased blood sugar increases periodontal disease. Even early periodontal disease matters. Any bit matters. But then the periodontal disease pathogens also increase blood sugar. So we routinely see that when people learn to do some simple things to take care of their mouth and address this early bleeding, that we get much better blood sugar control.
That is so cool. That's a clinical pro for me. Thank you, Dr. Debbie. I mean, obviously the connection is like, of course, right? I mean, of course, but playing into, again, one of the biggest drivers of all of our top killers, cardiovascular disease, cancer, metabolic issues, neurodegenerative diseases, is again, blood sugar. And then when you take that one step farther, it's really getting at that root cause, which that's what we're all trying to do. We're just all trying to optimize our bodies and not drive ourselves crazy doing it. And like, that's what I love what you said about people come in and they're on all these things and they're spending all this money, and that we can really pare it down and we can get to really the fundamentals. And a tool like these panels where you're looking at your weaknesses in the hallmarks, I think that's a great way to not have people pulling their hair out and just burning through money on suitcases of supplements that they don't necessarily need. Yeah.
Well, and then they get discouraged because it's like, well, I'm taking all this stuff. Someone brought me a sack of 63 things and they still feel terrible. So they need this testing.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%. And then, so like rolling into the advanced panel. So then we're looking at epigenetic clocks, age acceleration. And so under that umbrella is like your cellular senescence, like how apt are you to have an increased burden of these little zombie cells that are spewing out all this inflammation. And so that will look at under there and then give you some nutritional information that you can do to help. You can also look at the stem cell exhaustion and look at how to support those. One of the really cool ones that we found when we were doing the genetic work, which was a lot of work to go in these hallmarks and find all of the genetics that really match up with them, was this gene called the TERT. So TERT, and it actually has to do with your telomeres again. So if you have this, you may have a predisposition to shorter telomeres, which is, it's not good. You don't want your telomeres short. But really, this one was the biggest stress gene. So if there is a gene that is screaming to you, you need to manage your stress, like you really do, it is this one. And it's so interesting because it's like, we think like, being stressed out and having, I like to do HRV testing, wear a whoop strap and an aura ring. You're just really levels. I like the biometrics, but really looking like, oh my gosh, I really need to hone in on what is stressing me out. And this one, again, it's like, look at your stress hormone levels, look at your cortisol, look at your HRV, and don't push that aside. Don't really, you cannot out supplement yourself out of stress. Like
Yes.
you just can't. I mean, there's some great adaptogens, and PRL has some amazing adaptogens, and they really help. But really, kind of looking at the empowerment of this is that, your stressful job or your stressful, relationship, that is causing you to age very quickly, especially with this TERT gene. So it's like when I see this one, I'm like, okay, you can use like things like astragalus, of course, vitamin D, omega 3s, curcumin, and again, green tea. But really, again, you can balance those with really locking into managing those stress levels.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I think this is so key when we talk about relationships because, life is all about relationships, but in some cases, Dr. Halderman, people need to distance themselves from,
100%.
toxic people. And
Uh-huh.
this is so key because we think, oh, get along, get along, get along. But there's times when it's actually deadly.
Yes, it is deadly. It is literally causing you to age. And that's not what we don't want that to go any faster, right? And so, yes, like looking at the relationships again and saying no, like that's a really good thing to do, especially as a woman. Like it's okay to say no, like to all the projects and all the things. You don't have to be everything to everyone at every minute. So especially if I see this in a woman who's just burning that candle at both ends, right? It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is not looking good for you, right? We really, really need to be mindful and just taking it seriously, because I think some people think it's a badge of honor to take on so many things and be so busy, but it's like take a step back and really look at how this is biologically affecting you.
No, that is powerful, super powerful.
For sure.
So this test, what
Mhm.
does it look like? Blood test, saliva test?
It's just a saliva test. Yeah. It's just a saliva test. And again, there's two different panels. There's basic and there's advanced. And really, I think that the key again is that I wanted to drive home the message of why we age, because I think that it's a black box sometimes. And we're not sure. We're not sure like what is pushing us out of that health span, into our bodies not working properly. And that's where looking at the 12 hallmarks and going, okay, I've heard about my gut being important, but now Dr. Kelly was like, listen, this is published research that if we're not really honing in on our gut health, our oral health, gut health, it is aging us. And looking at chronic inflammation, what can we do to really reverse that, to take care of it? Some of the other ones like the loss of proteostasis, and that seems a little bit esoteric, right? But it does come down to, again, the foundationals. It comes down to good oral health, good diet, sleep, stress, and all that is going to really help. Even if you don't do the genetic test, just looking and knowing about the ways in which that your body is aging, I think that is so important, especially since like we started off talking about our genes, right? And the number one thing is genomic instability. Like our genes are getting, our DNA is getting attacked a million times a day, right?
Mhm.
So just look like, what can I do to have healthier air, healthier water, and healthier ecosystem? Every microbiome that I have, my skin, my mouth, my gut, and looking at what you can do to minimize that. So knowledge is power without having to go in and look at genetics. But I think it's so cool that we can finally stop guessing and going, well, I think I'm inflamed, or I think, well, do I have problems with autophagy? Do I clean up my cellular, garbage well? Like I don't know, right? So it's like, we'll show you exactly where you're at, and then it give you the practical targeted steps in order to optimize yourself, optimize your body, and not follow some biohacker who's telling you to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, that may be great for them, but it may not be good for you at all.
I totally agree. I don't like one size fits all clothing. And I don't think you do either. So why would we have one size fits all health practices? And,
Right.
and that's what someone's just always selling something that's, everybody should take. And I just love your research. I love your commitment to accuracy, to information that's actionable.
Yeah.
Dr. Halderman, thank you. So No, I want to do this. I want to do this test because I think I always tell my patients, you don't know the snake that doesn't bite you. Because, we're big gardeners. And so a couple of summers ago, my husband got bitten by a copperhead and
Ooh,
in our garden. So it makes you look at things differently and think, okay, what can we do to keep the snakes away? Okay,
yep.
do we have any piles of wood where mice like to live and snakes like to eat mice? It's sort of that same philosophy of, what can you do that's very root cause to change your susceptibility to multiple sclerosis or to, in my own life, a diagnosis of chronic lymphocytic leukemia or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once we know what we're vulnerable to, then we can address those vulnerabilities.
Right. We can take the guesswork out of it. Just like
Mhm.
you said, I think people can drive themselves crazy being like, well, I heard I'm supposed to take this spermidine or I heard I'm supposed to do this. And it's like, it's like give up. It's like, okay, like there's just too many things. And it's frustrating. But again, this really narrows it down. It helps a person get a precision report based on, again, their weaknesses. And it gives, again, the labs that would be great to know if those genes are expressing, like how bad is it? Because again, like you said, what are the rates of Alzheimer's and neurodegenerative diseases are awful and they are going up. And so I feel like if you really read this paper, if you look at these papers together and you look at especially the loss of proteostasis and some of those, it's like I think we have the answers here. I think we really know, and work of like Dale Bredesen with Alzheimer's, that's very comprehensive and amazing. But really just looking at, I don't want the end of my life to be in chronic pain or of a terrible neurodegenerative disease, or I want to know today what I can do, and that's really what the panel offers.
Yes, and when you know what you can do, then you don't spend time worrying about the things you can't do.
Yeah.
I mean, there's enough in our environment, Dr. Halderman, that we can't control. I mean, we've got to have 5G. We've got to have, whatever it is. And so if we can control certain things, then we don't stress over what we can't control. I want
Right.
to go back to your story.
Mhm.
So you got this diagnosis that
Mhm.
changed your trajectory. What happened? Tell us more about that story.
Yeah. So I stepped away from practice medicine, and so I earned that naturopathic medical degree, the traditional one, to really help myself. And my love has always been education. My love has always been really translating that really tough medical science for practitioners. I've lectured all over the world for lay people. And so it just took me down the road of, again, research. So I published papers on senescence, and I've served as a chief medical officer for a biotech company. So really just looking at things that we can do and to optimize our health. And I just really took all the information that I was learning and I applied it to myself. I applied it as best I could. And when I found genetics, man, it was 15 years ago, I was like, wow, this is great, because I had two children that were born, and one of my son had a sacral dimple, and so that could have been spina bifida. And then my daughter was born with she was born with tongue tie and lip tie. So I was like, something's not right here. And so I looked at my genetics, and lo and behold, I have problems with MTHFR, I have problems with the methylation. And so when I used the genetics to optimize myself, I had another baby long time after the first two, and he's just perfect because I took that information that I knew about myself genetically and I wasn't scared. It empowered me. It empowered me to make changes and look at my methylation panel and make sure it was on point, because I was scared that if I had another child that it would have spina bifida or something. So again, that kind of took me down the healing road, and I'm 1,000% recovered. I just had an MRI last year. I don't have any plaquing at all in my brain. I'm functioning at a super high level. And so that's where it's like, people with my story, it's really, sometimes it's inspiring to them, because if I would have just gave up and said that's it, like I probably wouldn't be here. I really wouldn't be here. And so that's kind of how I got to, and I'm a clinical advisor for Premier Research Labs, and I'm coming in and really helping to build these genetic panels, because I've built tons of genetic panels. I've used them appropriately. I've seen all the things that can go wrong, with using genetics. So I feel like we really have a very strong panel that is going to make a big difference in people's lives.
Well, and a big difference in their relationships. You think about if you had just given up, here you have these children that love you and that you love and your husband. And also I think people too often wear this badge of a diagnosis. And
Oh,
and and
yes.
I make people stand in front of the mirror in my clinic and say, I am not my diagnosis. I am a child of the living God. My body is designed to
Right.
heal. I have to figure out what I need to do to enable that healing, empower that healing. So to me, this test is key.
Yes.
Absolutely key. And I
Yeah.
believe, Dr. Halderman, that in the long run, I don't even know what the test costs, but I'm going to look it up today. Um, in the long run, it's going to save people money.
I totally believe that 1,000%. It is really going to save it will. The guessing game will be retired, and we will be able to be very strategic and have our non-negotiables. Like, I know that my mitochondria are susceptible, even though every single day that I'm on this planet, I'm happy to be here, but my mitochondria are wearing out. So I have to be extra aggressive in that. And then the other things, we don't have to just keep grabbing things and buying things. And I really do think it's going to save people money, which is great.
Yes, and give them more room in their cabinet.
Yeah,
All these
that's
pills.
right.
I said, I don't want to be one of those old people with all these pills laying out.
I
No,
know.
I want to be
I know.
strategic.
That's
Well,
right. That's
uh,
right.
you have just been delightful and inspiring, and I'm so excited to take this test. And so, listeners, I'll be taking this test and doing some Instagrams and all, and telling you what I find, because my CLL numbers are now below clinical findings.
Wow,
So
that's
I think
incredible.
that's all gone, and that's a detox issue. That's also a detox issue, and so I want to keep it that way. And
I
so
wonder if you have some autophagy SNPs.
I'll
I
bet
wonder.
so. I can't wait
Yeah.
to know. I'll let you know
Yeah.
how it turns out, because I'm going to order this today. So anything else that our listeners need to know? If you could, if you're watching this on YouTube, then you'll know how beautiful Dr. Helderman is. If you're on the podcast audio only, then you got to look her up, because
Oh
she
my
is
gosh.
radiant. No, you are
Oh my
radiant.
gosh.
And I have
You
to
are too,
figure,
Dr. Debbie. You
well,
are
you
too.
you have to be. I don't know how old you are. I mean, but you
I'm
look like
62.
you look like you're like 18. I
Oh
know.
my gosh, you're
No,
so kind.
you really do. You really do.
You do too. You are literally radiant. I will say this is that before I, when I was in medical school and training, like I was 20 pounds heavier. My skin was dull. I literally walk the walk. And so I do the things that I tell people to do, with optimizing genetics, and I've really been working on my hallmarks for a long time. And so I think that this is just what happens. Like, my biological age is 7 years younger than my chronological age.
Wow, way to go.
So
That's
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's here for the taking. It is the low hanging fruit that we can all have, and we can, again, knowledge is power. If you take a biological test, aging test, and you are older than your chronological age, it's like it's time for action. It's great news, because now we know, and what we can do to help that. But again, you're just radiant. I adore all the work that you're doing. You're just a powerful voice and an advocate, and absolutely love your content. It was such an honor to be on your podcast, Dr. Debbie. Thank you so much.
Well, it's a joy to have you. And I'll have all this information about the testing in the show notes, folks, because I'll be the first one before this even launches to order my test. And I may even be able to put in the show notes what I find
Ooh,
out, because
ooh,
that is exciting. So
yes.
thank you all for joining us today with Dr. Kelly Helderman. How can people find you and
Yeah,
your
so
info?
yeah. So I'm on Instagram, just my name. I'm on, most social medias. I do a lot for Premier Research Labs. So if you follow on Instagram, PR Labs, I'm on there a lot. And they have TikTok, all of the different social media. But that is where I'm devoting most of my time right now, because I'm so passionate about bringing this test into the hands of practitioners and people, so they can optimize their health.
Is this a test that people can get directly, or do they need to go through a practitioner?
At this point, we're looking at going through a practitioner, just because of the nuance of how you're looking at the signs and symptoms and then the labs. We just don't want to have someone take the genes, get scared, and then not know exactly what to do. So it is practitioner. So ask your practitioner. Have them go to prlabs.com and order the test kits. It's very simple, just saliva, no needles, and you're going to be set. You're going to get some great information.
Okay, so I can sign up as a practitioner today.
You sure can.
Okay, I have lots of patients interested in this. Well, thank you. And again, listeners, thank you for joining us for Vitality Made Simple. We want to enjoy every single day. I say I want to live to be 100 and have, 100 good years and 2 bad days. And I think with this test, we can do that. That can help facilitate that. And we're now, I don't even know, 140 countries and 5,500 cities. And that's because you all are sharing. I used to be a total social media loser. I'm not as bad now. I do have an Instagram. So you all join me on Instagram. We're having fun there, and share this podcast with whoever wants to age more slowly, enjoy their life, enjoy their relationships, maybe not get bitten by that snake that's, some kind of chronic illness that's going to steal their money, steal their time, and steal their joy. Thanks again for joining us. Blessings until next time.
Thanks for joining us on Vitality Made Simple podcast. Be sure to visit drdebbieosment.com for our courses and resources designed to help you feel better, look better, and enjoy better relationships. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for joining us.